The wreck didn't look like any ship I'd ever salvaged. Most broken vessels lie still and defeated. This one breathed. Literally. The hull expanded and contracted in slow pulses, exhaling faint clouds of violet mist that smelled like someone had spilled perfume on a battery. My scanner beeped in confusion and then shut itself off, which felt personal. I nudged it with my boot and muttered a reminder that we did not quit just because reality became inconvenient. The scanner did not care. The canyon around me was quiet, except for the ship's rhythmic sighing and the occasional crackle of lightning that danced along its surface. Not normal lightning, more like someone took a thunderstorm, taught it to behave, and set it on low simmer. I kept walking, bracing for the moment something tried to eat me. I'd been a mechanic on 6 different frontier worlds. If a piece of alien tech wasn't planning to kill you, it was at least considering it. When I reached the ruptured hatch, the ship reacted. The metal rippled like liquid, reshaping itself into a perfect oval doorway. I froze. "Okay," I whispered. "That's either a polite invitation or a warning that this is the last doorway I'll ever see." The doorway did not clarify, so I stepped inside. The interior felt alive. Filaments of soft light pulsed beneath the floor, carrying signals like veins. Panels shifted and rearranged themselves as if the ship were embarrassed about being messy in front of a guest. Deeper in the corridor, I heard frantic voices, high, musical, overlapping in panicked tones. I followed them, partly out of curiosity and partly because the door behind me sealed shut, and there's nothing like being trapped to motivate exploration. The room I entered was filled with tall, long-eared humanoids who looked like elves that had wandered into a science fair and decided to stay forever. Their eyes shimmered like holograms, constantly adjusting focus in ways that made me dizzy. They spun toward me, startled, and began speaking in their musical language. Their translator device flickered to life on a console and did its best with the chaos. "Who activated the human?" It blurted out. "Incorrect translation," I said quickly, holding my hands up. "I come in peace, also accidentally." One of them approached, robes fluttering like they were caught in a permanent breeze. Her long ears angled toward me with sharp curiosity, and glowing markings curled along her cheeks. She looked almost human, except more symmetrical than any person had a right to be. The translator hiccuped again. "We are doomed." "Also hello. Let's focus on the second part," I suggested. Their leader explained, through several mistranslations, that their vessel's core systems had collapsed all at once. They were stranded, unable to escape the planet's gravity, and the ship would soon lose the last of its life support. They had assumed no intelligent life lived on this backwater moon. I tried not to take offense. Backwater was a matter of perspective. When I examined the exposed core, it shivered like a frightened animal. The circuitry was unlike anything I'd ever seen, woven rather than built, grown rather than assembled. But damage was damage, and I understood that. With some coaxing, rerouting, and a few threats that probably didn't translate well culturally, I stabilized the failing neural links. The ship hummed in relief, lights brightening. Panels shifted back into their proper places. One of the aliens fainted from either joy or shock. Their leader stepped forward, her markings glowing in warm patterns. She gestured for the others to gather. A hush fell over them, followed by collective awe, and I prepared myself for either praise or blame. Both were common results after I fixed things that had no business working in the first place. Instead, they bowed. The translator chirped. "By ancient custom, the honored fixer shall receive a companion and protector." I blinked, a what now? They parted to reveal the long-eared woman who had inspected me earlier. She stepped forward gracefully, her iridescent eyes locking onto mine with a mixture of solemn pride and something dangerously close to amusement. She spoke, and the translator supplied. "I am Lyra. By our ways I am your reward." My brain could not decide whether to panic, laugh, or politely walk into the nearest wall. "Hey," I stammered, "fixing your spaceship was just a good deed. I don't need." Rejecting the honor, the translator warned, is cosmically offensive. Lyra tilted her head, ears angled in a way that somehow conveyed both respect and the certainty that I would absolutely cause trouble she would need to prevent. Her markings glowed a calm blue. "Do not be afraid," she said soothingly. "I am trained in 57 forms of protection, diplomacy, and crisis management." "Crisis management," I echoed. "Yes," she said, "you appear to require it." The rest of the crew cheered. Someone pressed a glowing fruit into my hand as a congratulatory gesture, and it immediately tried to unfold into a small, friendly lizard. I stared at Lyra. Lyra stared back. The fruit lizard stared at both of us. My life, I realized, had just taken a turn I was not qualified for. Lyra followed me everywhere. Not in the casual, friendly way a person might accompany someone, but in the intense, silent, always 3 steps behind manner of a highly trained guardian evaluating every potential threat, including chairs. When I stubbed my toe on a console leg, she vaporized the console leg. I explained that this was unnecessary. She explained that human toes were structurally fragile and likely essential for balance. We compromised by agreeing that she would not destroy furniture unless it attacked first. The ship had repaired much of itself, though it still made nervous chirping sounds whenever I walked by, like it remembered what dying felt like and blamed me for witnessing it. Lyra insisted on giving me a tour of the vessel to acquaint me with my new responsibilities, which sounded ominous until I realized she meant things like where the food generators were, and which corridor walls occasionally shifted shape without warning. As we walked, the crew gave us a wide berth. Apparently, being designated someone's reward made Lyra socially radioactive and me unexpectedly important. One alien wearing a crystalline visor bowed so deeply he nearly clipped his own ears on the floor. Another presented me with a bundle of shimmering cloth that turned out to be a ceremonial sash. It wrapped itself around my torso on its own and settled into place with a smug little wiggle. Lyra approved. I tried not to scream. I wanted answers. I wanted to understand why I suddenly had a long-eared alien woman trailing behind me and addressing me as though I were both her responsibility and her mildly disappointing science project. "So," I began, as we entered a glowing chamber filled with floating data orbs, "this whole reward thing, does it come with an instruction manual, a starter guide, a pamphlet titled So You Accidentally Acquired an Alien Companion?" Lyra paused, her ears tilting thoughtfully. "There is a cultural handbook," she said. "It is traditionally memorized at age 7. "Great," I said. "Do you have a version for people who didn't grow up in your culture?" "Yes." She pointed to a large cube of crystal resting on a pedestal. "This one." The cube was larger than my torso. I stared at it. "How long does it take to memorize?" "Usually 12 years. I sat down on the nearest bench, which fortunately did not reshape itself or sprout legs. "Lyra, I fix engines. I can't memorize 12 years of cultural protocols. I forget where I put my wrench 5 times an hour." She considered this gravely. "Then I will memorize it for you." "That's not how memorizing works." "Of course it is. You ask questions, I answer, knowledge transferred." I rubbed my face. "All right, fine. Then explain why I can't decline this reward without triggering cosmic offense. What does that even mean?" Lyra folded her hands behind her back. "Our customs bind us to honor those who save our lives. Declining the honor signals that the saved lives were not worth saving." "That's not what it means for humans," I argued. "For humans it usually means, I don't know what to do with this situation and would like to go home before something explodes." She tilted her head, but something already exploded. I sighed, not helping. Her markings glowed faintly, a soft lavender. "If it comforts you, I do not expect you to command or control me. I am simply assigned to aid and protect you." "That's the part that confuses me," I said. "I repair stuff, I'm not important." "You are important to us," she said, like it was a simple, objective fact. "You saved our ship, our lives." The elders chose carefully. A spark of humor flashed in her eyes. They chose me. Very humble of you, I muttered. We reached the ship's neural core, now stabilized but humming with a low, uneasy rhythm. Lyra's expression shifted. Her ears angled sharply, listening to wavelengths I couldn't detect. The air felt heavier. There is something wrong, she murmured. I stepped beside her, studying the shimmering threads of quantum circuitry. Looks stable to me. That is the problem, she whispered. It is too stable. Someone smoothed the signal, someone hid something. The lights dimmed, as if the ship itself disapproved of what she had said. Lyra pressed her palm to the nearest panel, her markings brightening in response. A concealed layer of data unraveled like a holographic scroll, symbols fluttering in patterns I didn't understand. Then we saw it. A dark pulse buried deep within the ship's diagnostics, camouflaged code like a parasite wrapped in a disguise. It throbbed in irregular intervals, feeding on the core's energy. My skin prickled. This wasn't an accident, I said quietly. No, Lyra agreed, her voice low. Someone did this, someone aboard our ship. I tried to lighten the mood because terror is easier to face when you make inappropriate jokes. So, good news. I'm not the reason your ship almost died. Bad news, sabotage. Lyra didn't smile. Her eyes were fixed on the shifting data, her entire posture alert. We must investigate, quietly. If our saboteur suspects we know, they may act again. Do I need armor? I asked. No. Should I get armor anyway? Yes. She led me out of the chamber, walking with new purpose. Her ears twitched at every sound, every flicker of movement. The ship seemed darker now, its once calm pulse filled with quiet tension. And though she didn't say it out loud, I felt it in the way she stayed close to me, one step behind but always between me and danger. My assigned protector, gifted to me by ancient custom, had just become the only thing standing between us and a threat hiding somewhere aboard a living starship. And I was starting to realize that for all her confidence, even Lyra was afraid. I woke to Lyra standing over me with a weapon that looked suspiciously like a tuning fork, designed by someone who hated peace and quiet. Her ears were tense, angled like blades, and her markings pulsed with sharp orange light. It was not the ideal way to start the day. I sat up fast enough to nearly dislocate something. What happened? I whispered. The parasite code has activated, she said. The saboteur is moving. We must hurry. Can I brush my teeth first? No. Right, I muttered. Galactic emergency. Bad breath later. She grabbed my wrist, gently, but with zero room for negotiation, and pulled me into the corridor. The ship's lights flickered in waves, responding to the unstable core. Panels folded inward and outward like the ship was anxious. I patted the nearest wall in reassurance, which probably didn't help either of us. Lyra led me toward the engineering chamber, her steps silent, mine considerably less so. The closer we got, the more the air vibrated with energy. When the chamber doors parted, we found the saboteur already inside, one of the crew members who had bowed so dramatically at my earlier arrival. His markings glowed a sickly, corrupted red, as if the parasite code had infected him directly. He turned to face us, and his voice layered itself into a distorted echo. The ship carries knowledge that must not escape this world. Lyra stepped in front of me so fast she blurred. You endangered us all. I protected the galaxy, he hissed. This vessel preserves a relic from the before time. If revived, it will awaken forces we cannot contain. I peeked around Lyra's shoulder. Okay, but you could have tried explaining that without crashing the ship. Communication is a thing. The saboteur didn't appreciate my input. Energy built between his hands, crackling like electrified sand. Before he could release it, Lyra lunged. The two collided in a blur of light and motion, their long ears slicing the air as they moved. I darted along the edges of the room, searching for anything useful. A plasma cutter caught my eye. I grabbed it, not for combat, but because all problems look at least partially solvable when you're holding a plasma cutter. The saboteur slammed Lyra into a shifting panel that cushioned her like the ship was trying to help. She rebounded, striking him with a sweep of her arm that left a streak of shimmering light in the air. He staggered but didn't fall. I shouted, "Lyra, stall him." She did not shout back, but she did flash me a brief look that said, very clearly, "If you die, I will be cosmically offended." I sprinted to the core controls. The parasite code writhed like a dark web through the diagnostics. It wasn't enough to delete it, it was entangled too deeply. But maybe, just maybe, I could trap it. I flipped open a panel with the plasma cutter. Sparks flew. The ship groaned in a tone that suggested mild disapproval. I ignored it. Using wires, couplers, and a frankly irresponsible amount of improvisation, I rewired a containment loop from the ship's redundant systems. The loop wasn't meant for digital parasites, but neither were half the things I repaired, and that never stopped me before. Behind me, Lyra deflected a blast with her arm shield, the impact sending her sliding backward. The saboteur advanced, markings pulsing faster. "Jalen," she called, "whatever you are doing, finish it." "Almost there," I yelled, which was mostly true and partially optimistic. I rerouted the energy flow, twisted two wires together, and smacked the panel until the lights aligned. Engineering at its finest. The containment loop thrummed to life. "Lyra," I shouted, "get him to the center." She didn't question me. She leapt, seized the saboteur by the arm, and spun him toward the core platform with a movement that was far too elegant for something so violent. The moment his feet hit the platform, I slammed the final switch. Light exploded around him, locking him in a sphere of shimmering containment. The parasite code ripped free of the ship's systems, drawn into the loop like smoke sucked into a vortex. The saboteur screamed, not in pain, but in raw frustration, as the infected energy peeled away from him and dissolved into nothing. The sphere contracted, then collapsed into a harmless flicker before fading entirely. The saboteur dropped to his knees, unconscious but alive. The ship let out a long, relieved hum. Lyra sagged against a console, panting. I rushed to her side, grabbing her arm. "You okay?" She nodded weakly. "Yes, you trapped the corruption." "Clever." "Improvised," I said, which is basically human cleverness with worse planning. Her markings gentled into soft blue. "It is enough." Crew members arrived moments later, horrified at what had happened but grateful the threat was gone. They carried the saboteur away for healing and investigation, their solemnity replaced with awe when they looked at me. Someone tried to bow again. I begged them not to. Lyra gave them a look that translated clearly to "he has suffered enough." Over the next hours, the ship restored itself fully. The core stabilized. The halls brightened. The anxious pulsing quieted to a steady, content hum. Lyra walked beside me, not behind, not as a shadow, but as an equal. For the first time since this entire cosmic mess began, it felt right. When the elders summoned me to the central chamber, I expected another ceremony or sash that tried to strangle me. Instead, they offered something simple. Passage to anywhere in the galaxy as thanks for saving them a second time. I turned to Lyra. Her markings flickered softly, questioning. "Well," I said, "I don't really have a destination, or a plan, or a map, or anything." She stepped closer, her voice gentle. "Then travel with us, with me." I smiled.